all present here. In a room like this, with so much brilliance and potential, the learnings are certainly endless. We welcome you all to Samavesh, the annual Business Academia Conclave, organized by SPJIMR's postgraduate program in management participants. I am Robin Augustine, and I will be your host for today. SPJN was established in 1981 in Mumbai and is one of India's leading postgraduate management institutes. PGPM is an 18-month general management program and addresses the unique needs of accomplished and ambitious seasoned professionals who come with prior industry experience. The institute is ranked number 6 by the Business World B School rankings and ranked number 7 by India Today's 2023 rankings amongst the management institutes in India for its PGPM program. The audience joining us today represents the current class of 2024 to 25 with an average work experience of close to 5.3 years and a total of 165 participants. Close to 30% of our batch comes with prior industry experience in both technology and consulting. Artificial intelligence is a powerful catalyst for business model innovation and enables data-driven strategies, leading to sustainable competitive advantages in today's tech-driven marketplace. By revolutionizing decision-making processes, enhancing customer experiences, and optimizing operations, AI improves efficiency and fosters innovation across industries. However, the integration of AI into business models also presents complex challenges, including ethical considerations, data governance, and the need for organizational adaptability. This conclave brings together visionary leaders to explore the cutting-edge implementations of AI in business model innovation. Participants will gain valuable insights into how AI is reshaping industries, driving strategic evolution, and setting the stage for future business paradigms. I request you all to join us at the Samavesh Information Management Conclave 2024 as we embark on this exploration of AI-powered business models, innovation, and implementation. Whilst the topic for today is on AI, might I assure you that there is nothing artificial about our batch's intelligence. I would now hand over the stage to my fellow batchmate, Pratham Sharma, to commence with his presentation. Pratham, the stage is yours to take.
Welcome to the IM Conclave. The theme of the conclave is AI for business models, innovation and implementation. Every innovation occurs to improve the living standards of human life. And what's better than trying to save a life? So here I am presenting you the idea of revolutionizing the emergency response time in urban India. Let's look at the current scenario of ambulance system in India. We lose close to 24,000 people each day while traveling, while either on their way towards the hospital or the ambulance is trying to reach the patient on time. Every minute counts when we are in such a scenario. On average, an ambulance takes close to 25 to 30 minutes to reach the patient's place. We even get our Domino's pizza delivered even before 30 minutes. So what are the current challenges to the situation? The delayed reaction to the emergency vehicles. The passive siren of the ambulance leaves no time for any vehicle to give it the space. Why do I call it a passive siren? Because you only hear the siren when the ambulance is very close to the vehicles. The traffic congestion issues. We as very good citizens always try to give the ambulance the way, but how can we do it? There's no space for us to move our vehicles aside. And failed innovation techniques. We have already seen multiple examples like the bus corridor which was implemented in Bangalore. India is a developing nation and we don't have the infrastructure currently to support dedicated corridors for such services. So what do we actually want? We want a new perspective to reach out to the core of the problem. We need a new thinking, we need a new approach to address this problem. We need a human-centric approach to see who all are the stakeholders involved in this problem. We need to take into account the drivers who are driving the ambulance, the citizens like us who actually want to give the ambulance away, the medical staff and the patients also. We need to take a holistic approach. We cannot have a dedicated corridor to let the services go by. We need to also take into account the traffic congestion issues that are already there. Plus, we need a collaborative innovation. You, me, the public, government, and the medical staff as a whole needs to come onto the picture to save a life. So what do we actually want? We want a proactive visual aid system. We want a system that alerts the drivers beforehand that an ambulance is approaching. We need to give them ample time and gap so that they can move their vehicles aside and give the ambulance away. We need to efficiently utilize the existing infrastructure to reach to a solution here. How can we do it? Presenting the smart bubble corridor system. It's an AI-powered traffic management system which not only removes the static issue of generating a corridor, but creating a dynamic corridor every time an ambulance wants to give away. How does it work? This is an as-is and to-be scenario. So currently, if you see an ambulance is stuck in the traffic, even if the citizens wants to give it away, they are unable to do so because there is no place to move ahead. But what if a dynamic corridor gets created, a notification or a smart visual cue is sent to the person who is 2 kilometers ahead in the traffic jam, that you need to move your vehicle to a side so that the ambulance can actually move. Even if this person moves his vehicle by an inch, it would create a ripple effect across the entire corridor so that the ambulance can move across. I will also like to demonstrate how AI can help you to simplify your complex problems into solutions. Let's have a look.
Using AI for social impact, revolutionising ambulance traffic with smart signals and digital public infrastructure in India. Smart signals and digital infrastructure are crucial for ambulances in India. Picture this: an ambulance zipping through traffic without a hitch. Introducing the Smart Bubble Corridor, a revolutionary system that clears traffic for ambulances in real time. Traffic lights automatically switch to special signals when an ambulance is near. Notifications are sent to Google and Ola Maps, alerting drivers to move aside and create a clear path. Smart Bubble Corridor saving lives, one green light and notification at a time.
Another use case of how AI can be implemented in the social cause here. So how does it work? Whenever a patient reaches, maybe he gives a call to 108, the AI system comes into activation. It lets you know, it analyzes the route, the traffic that is already present on the road, and lets you know the optimized pathway as to where and how the ambulance should move. Smart cameras assisted route planning. So in the urban cities of the country, we already have smart cameras that has been enabled. So it will let you know the real-time situation of how the traffic is currently moving. DPI enabled proactive corridor creation. India has a very niche digital public infrastructure that is in the growth stage. So we have currently all the traffic management systems on a network which can be utilized as a whole. We can send in special signals to the traffic lights so that the people can come to know, okay, there's an ambulance approaching and we need to give it away. We can also use multi-channel alert system. How does that work? So again, utilizing the DPI framework, there are many applications on which we can send the notifications to all the people who are ahead of the ambulance in the traffic jam and let them know an ambulance is approaching, kindly give a sign. The dynamic corridor optimization and monitoring. As I mentioned earlier, that maybe a person who is 2 kilometers ahead of you might get a notification. But what if the traffic jam is very long? Then you can also have a 3-kilometer corridor that has been created or a 1-kilometer corridor that can be created. Ambulance guidance. We can also induce this into the system which is already present for the drivers to know that, okay, you need to take a right turn or a left turn or what would be the optimized pathway here. And then, as all AI system works, we need to give it a feedback and the analysis to improve the system ahead. The technology behind the solution, AI and machine learning. Basically, AI is always implemented for predicting better pathways. How does this prediction work? Even before the patient starts to go to the hospital, the AI system actually comes into the picture, gives you the optimized pathway as to how you should travel. Rapid image recognition and decision making would help and assist the ambulance drivers to move forward without any obstruction. The IoT devices, smart cameras and traffic signals. As I mentioned, like in the urban cities of our country, we already have smart signals present there. So why not to utilize them to the benefit of saving a life? Smartphones. The tools in our hands is not just used for voice communication. I consider them as tools for societal innovation and transformation here. So we have all different kinds of applications which can be addressed via notification from the government to let you know you need to move aside. Why not to utilize the open architecture for data exchange and in the real time? So all applications that are present on ONDC can also be assisted and notified. Cloud computing and 5G network, with the upgradation of India's infrastructure, we can utilize all these real-time data processing and fast techniques to communicate better. And leveraging all the DPI stack that India has currently developed. The open APIs of ONDCs, the Umang application, which is a unified mobile application. We saw such an example during the COVID times when we utilized an application to know the status of our area. And national urban stack innovation. So India is moving towards smart cities, so we can also implement that. What would be the key performance indicators? So one of the key indicators would be to see how the responsiveness of the citizens are to the in-app notifications. And we also need to check how the corridor has been successfully implemented or not. Shoot time. So we are trying to measure what would be the response time before the activation of the corridor and after the corridor has been implemented. Even if you are able to save a minute, I think the KPI would stand as a success. Public awareness and response. The only cost of implementing this solution is that we need to educate the people about this solution exists, and whenever you see a notification, just move aside. Traffic congestion reduction, we can also map as to where in the idea has been implemented and what is the situation of the traffic here. The implementation strategy works in, we'll have to pilot a program in one subsection of the city, then move on to different subsections, and then to another metro cities here. Integration with the existing traffic management systems, because they are already on the network currently. We can utilize slogans like give way, save a life. We can also take into account the ISRO's NAVIC satellite, which is our India's indigenous constellation satellite. It will let you pinpoint the various roads and pathways wherein the ambulance is currently moving and what all cars and vehicles are there in front of it. Currently, what the idea of the plan is, like, we'll be implementing it in Bangalore for this subsection of the city. So, Smart Bubble Corridor is not just an innovative approach. It would stand as a testament that India is actually implementing and accepting the digital infrastructure to improve our current structure and for better responses to save lives. What would be the next steps? We can also see that we can develop this infrastructure into a separate DPI infrastructure for healthcare management systems. We can also take into account the other emergency vehicles, like maybe the fire truck or the school buses, which need to get on time. One key takeaway, if I would like all of us to remember from this presentation, is even if we just save one life through this initiative, this project would stand as a success. Because until and unless we imagine ourselves to be in that situation, we won't know the importance of it. Thank you so much.
Speaking presentation, you had the audience hooked on with the use of AI for emergency response, and your solution is a breakthrough and indeed a change movement, as you rightly mentioned. To grace our presence and make Samavesh an extended learning experience for all of us, I am pleased to introduce the esteemed and much awaited panelists for the Information Management Conclave today. We have with us Mr. Aniket Palkar, who is the head of AI at KPIT. Mr. Palkar has 24 years of industry experience and has deep expertise in developing data-driven solutions across various sectors. Prior to his tenure at KPIT, he spent 15 years at General Electric, leading the development of industrial IoT and data analytics solution. Next, we have Mr. Ankur Banerjee, who is the Senior Director and Delivery Partner at Tiger Analytics. Mr. Banerjee has 22 years of experience in analytics and IT across program management and pre-sales, and is experienced in setting up and scaling multiple global accounts from scratch. Joining us next, we have Mr. Gaurav Sharma, AVP at HCL. Mr. Sharma has over 18 plus years of work experience with HCLTech, IDC, IBM, Wipro and TCS, covering consulting, strategy, BD, pre-sales and product management functions. Our fourth guest for today is Mr. Hemant Sindhi, who is the Associate Partner for AI Ops at IBM. Mr. Sindhi is an accomplished IT leader with over 20 plus years of extensive experience across multiple sectors. Currently, he leads the Automation Center of Excellence for AI-led operations at IBM. Our last guest is our very own go-to-tech strategist, Professor Milind Kamat. Professor Kamat specializes in information management and analytics and is the chairperson of the Global Management Program here at SPJIMR. As a senior industry executive with a career spanning 35 years, Professor Kamat was appointed as CEO of Atos India and Executive Vice President of Atos Group. Our dearest faculty member, Professor Shailaja Jha, is our moderator for the day. Professor Shailaja is the Department Chair of IM and Analytics at SPJIMR. Professor Jha has a rich experience ranging from serving the Government of India as a civil servant for almost a decade to having close to 2 decades of global consulting experience in the IT services with firms such as Wipro, Cognizant, and Infosys. In her most recent corporate endeavors, Professor Jha was the technology leader and delivery head for the consumer, media, and tech practice at L&T Infotech. Professor Shailaja's warm smiles are a common sight for students. Dear panelists, we are excited to have you at our fest today and look forward to take away valuable insights from this session as we prepare ourselves to embark in our corporate journeys. Without further ado, I request the commencement of the panelist discussion.
Hello, everyone. We look forward to another 40 minutes of a good panel discussion. And I'm sure our students will take a lot away from your experiences. And so without much ado, I'll get started. I'll start with you, Hemant. Milind, I'll come to you last, always. We plan to do 4 rounds of Q&A. And you will, in the end, we'll have a student round where we'll ask the students to raise questions as well. So I'll start with you, Hemant. Our first round of question is around the topic on how AI is reshaping business models. Interestingly, last year, our panel, our Samavesh was around generative AI. The releases had just happened. And it's now that the reactions to AI have become a little more nuanced, having gone through another year of implementations. So Hemant, to you, how is AI fundamentally transforming customer experience models? And what role does customer data play in shaping the AI-driven transformation?
So, hi, good morning, everybody. So it's a transformative journey, as you said, since generative AI came into play last year or 2 years back. But the AI journey started maybe a decade ago. And that transformation on customer experiences were part of the digital transformation journey that started maybe a decade or more ago. The definition of personalization, that's the first topic which touches all of us. Personalization is what is changing for everyone. It started with traditional AI doing some parts of it, so catering to my needs in a specific way. And now with AI being more pervasive, I'm getting more personalized stuff. That's the first change, right? More personalization. So show the consumer what the consumer wants to see. And we see, I think most of you would be on OTT platform, Netflix, you see it. The more content that you're watching, AI is driving you to more similar content that fits you. If you use Spotify or YouTube Music, you would notice that all the AI, if you request for, let's say, a Kishore Kumar song, for that genre of music, you will be having same content shown to you or made you play. So that's personalization is one area. The second area where we are seeing is empowering the end users, right? Empowering the customers. And that's where the AI assistants play a lot of role, be it virtual assistants, voice assistants. And all of this is making end user carry out AI stuff and automation by themselves. So rather than depending on somebody else to come and cater to their needs, Now customers are empowered, and that's how the consumer behavior is changing. Example could be, if today I have a fiber network running at my place, and if there's a glitch, I can request it on the app, which triggers an automation which fixes it automatically. So totally touchless, 100% automated, and that's how it's changing. And all of this is happening, to your second part of the question, with data being the fuel here, right? And how my behaviors are as I interact with systems. Uh, that data is used to really personalize that behavior or transform that behavior. And there is also a lot of responsibility, and that's where I think any AI discussion, we should not miss out on the ethics part. And one of the core principles being the data belongs to the creator. So if it's my data, customers don't expect us to use it for training generic models, use it for catering to building your own personal solutions. So I think that ethics portion has to be part of that foundation. But yes, personalization and empowering end user consumer is what I see is changing now.
You work with HCL, and you're doing a lot of work with cloud environments, and truly with AI we saw cloud becoming a very critical part of digital infrastructure. So my question to you is, how do you envision AI redefining business strategies for enterprises leveraging multi-cloud environments, especially in traditional industries?
Good morning, everyone. From a strategy standpoint, I think there are a couple of things, and whatever I would say, it's more from a global perspective. So there is a long-term strategy that needs to be looked upon. We see a shift in the critical decision making a lot that is currently happening. The strategy has to be more outcome focused. You have to be more agile to basically execute that strategy. You need to leave room for flexibility there. If you have to fail, you have to fail fast, right? That is one mantra in AI that you have to basically look at. You don't have to drag, because that dragging will typically increase the cost, and that will also increase the effort and everything. The second part is on the execution side of it. So on the execution, we are seeing three types of execution strategies. The first one is more transformative, line of business led. They are more CEO led agendas of strategy, vertical use cases that you see in FS or life sciences, healthcare, all of that. The second is more solution led. They are more CIO led, more in terms of how do you look at document summarization, all those cases, work bots within the organization, all of that. More focused on productivity and efficiency. The third one is CTO led, which is more in terms of the technology led, which is more of your code generation kind of use cases that are there. But one thing is common that we see is your strategy has to be very flexible with respect to AI. There is a huge cost associated with when you are running AI, whether it's on cloud, whether it's on-prem, whether it's anywhere, or for that matter. The strategy also has to take into account, let's say from an enterprise perspective, how do you monetize that piece? So there will be, we are working with very, very, very large customers, enterprises. There are tens of use cases which will look very good in the labs. But if you can't monetize or find a way to basically make money or at least fund that either ways, then that strategy typically dies down after some time in the hands of maybe a CIO, CTO, or a CEO, any which ways. So the strategy has to be thought of as a fine balance between what you want to do versus how much it will cost or how you will monetize that piece. And then the third aspect is the security and all of that piece, right? Ethical piece. You don't have to shut things down necessarily. So the regulations that are coming today are typically moving towards that. So your strategy has to take into account all of these things.
Thanks, Gaurav. We do have a round on regulations and your thoughts on regulations. But yeah, very good points. clearly you're saying that if AI is going to be so expensive, the implementations have to sort of have a clear path to monetization. Otherwise, experiments could.
Has to be monetized, and so one is for the greater good that will be done by the government, the one that we saw, right, mostly by the governments. They will pump in the money, but the larger consumer AI has to be monetized in some shape and form. And AI has to move beyond bots and assistants to applications which are more suited.
More holistic play.
Yeah.
True. Thank you. Thanks. To you, Ankur, you have a lot of experience. How do you see the evolution of AI shifting the way businesses create and scale value within traditional sectors like insurance and healthcare, which are probably one of the first ones to adopt AI also, having been very information intense sectors? So if you could talk about that evolution.
Sure. So like you rightly pointed out, right? I think insurance is a good example. I mean, there has been a lot of work done in the actuarial pricing area, for example, right? A lot of statistical analysis and so on. But if you take a holistic view, right, insurance traditionally has been a little bit of a risk averse, right, industry. That's essentially how they operate, right? It's all about risk. So I would say they have been, slowly and steadily, right, adopting AI, ML, right? Some of the new stuff like Gen AI that's coming up, right? What they typically do, and I think maybe they're not probably as fast moving as maybe CPG or retail, right, in terms of things like promotions and driving AI. But what they typically do is they go the traditional route, right? They pick a few areas, they do a few proof of concepts, right? They look at the results, and the results not only from a customer and the business impact angle, but you have to look at things like, for example, regulatory, right, ethics, right, fairness, again, very, very important, right, in things like insurance claims, right, policy issuance, and so on. So they have been very, I would say, cautiously enthusiastic, right, if that is a word, right, in terms of how they look at ML. But if you look at, speaking from experience, right, we work with some of the large Fortune 1000 insurance companies, right? They've been in this AI ML journey, right, for about 10 years now, right? Traditional AI ML kind of models. And over the years, they've built up, certain companies have built up more than 100 models, right, that are running on a daily basis in production, right? And essentially, if you look at it, this covers the entire, again, talking about insurance, right, the entire insurance value chain. Right from how you do your marketing, right? So you need to look at things like propensity modeling, right? Which customers to target with what kind of products, right? Then, as you're aware, underwriting is a big part of insurance, essentially taking a call in terms of whom to issue the policy to. So a lot of risk analysis, things like augmented underwriting. There are models, for example, that score applicants, right, based on their risk scores. And obviously, for the ones that are essentially high risk or low risk, right, the decision can be taken more in an automated manner. For the others, you need to have manual underwriter interventions, right? So underwriting is where a lot of impact is happening from AI/ML. The other big area is claims, right? So again, just to quote a few statistics, right? Insurance claims, if you look at the entire US industry, fraudulent claims causes about $300 billion, right, dollars of loss, right, per year across the industry. So how do you use AI/ML to flag fraudulent claims, right? There are classification models, right? So that has, again, a lot of impact, right, in terms of looking at claims. And last but not least, customer management, right? Things like churn analytics, right? How do you ensure cross-sell, right? Those kind of models are also getting a lot of prevalence. But again, right, probably I'll just conclude with how the industry is also viewing something like Gen AI, that same cautiously enthusiastic manner, right? They're looking at it more internally to start with, things like knowledge management, getting a sense of what it takes, right, to move ahead. But I think once they have that comfort, we'll start to see even more adoption. So that's how I think a traditional industry like insurance is probably viewing something like AI.
Last, Aniket, and of course I'll come to you, Milind. Aniket, you work a lot with the automotive sector, and KPIT is doing some very cutting edge work in the space. Based on your experience in the automotive and the industrial sectors, How do you see AI-driven business models evolving in these industries? Maybe more so in the West first, and then maybe in the Indian context. But how do you see them evolve?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I think AI, is not new. We've been doing AI in some form. I think big data has been around as a term for a while. We've been doing traditional machine learning, deep learning. Of course, now there is. I would say even generative AI is not new, but there's now a new technique that's come in the last couple of years. So I don't think the business models change fundamentally, but I think AI does bring in a differentiator in some of the business models. So I think if I look at business models that have been emerging in the last few years, there's a lot of focus now on subscription-based models, right? And that's where, with all the data that you're collecting, you can bring in a differentiator. So if I look at the automotive industry today, right, we're moving from a traditional powertrain, traditional vehicles to electric vehicles. Now, as you go into electric vehicles, it's very hard to differentiate because you don't have an engine, you don't have a transmission. So how do you differentiate a vehicle driving experience? Manufacturers have been doing things like introducing fake engine noise, right? That will take you only this far, right? But electric vehicle is fundamentally a battery and a motor, right? So the way that you can differentiate is through the vehicle experience, through the software experience. And software is something, it's going to be an ongoing cost because you have to keep evolving software, which means you have to necessarily go to a subscription-based model. So that's one way, AI is going to be significant because, data will take you only so far. You've got to bring in the insight, which is where your AI will come in. The other model that I see really, being impacted by AI is, let's call it product as a service. I've also, we all are familiar with the term software as a service. I've also seen a term, you might also read, service as software. So basically what happens is, let's take an example of, outside of automotive, let's take ERP, right? So, there will be, certain ERP company, without taking a name, which has significant market share. They have captured, maybe 50-60% of the value. But there is still a lot of value that is there on the service side of this, right? Which is not captured by this company. There's a huge ecosystem of ERP consultants, So if you look at the whole value chain, right, I would not say the market is the market for ERP software, which might be, let's say, a couple $1 billion, right? But it is the whole ecosystem. How many companies today employ employees and consultants who are focused on improving the ERP workflow? And how do I, monetize or capture that value, right? With AI, I think these companies will be able to capture more of that value because you are able to, automate a lot of these workflows. See, in the software world, where we moved from was having customized software that was built for everybody to software products, because essentially what you did is you standardize the software and then you ask companies to standardize their workflow, right? And that's where you are able to get economies of scale with software. Now, what's happening now with AI is, AI can also bring back that customization, right? I can have an agent that is tailored to your workflow. So I don't have to bring all your workflow to me. I will bring part of your workflow to you, and I will also walk a couple of steps to you, right? And this is where I see a lot of value capture now getting sort of, centralized, right, in some of these companies. And so I think, we have these banks now with, multi-trillion-dollar, valuations. I think that process will be accelerated by AI. The rich will get richer, but that's going to be, I think, a big difference, big disruptor that we'll see, in the next half a decade or so. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's certainly going to happen over the next half decade.
That's a very interesting point you bring in. I mean, when you move to products, there was a certain decustomization, depersonalization. AI will bring that personalization back. Wonderful. To you, Milind, you study and research a lot, you worked a lot. What is your thoughts on AI reshaping the business model?
Yeah, because AI creates, all the three dimensions of the business. How do you create a value? How do you deliver the value? And how do you capture the value, as my panelists mentioned? I will take two examples from my previous avatar, because I worked on one was in lending because that was my core operations, and other was on oil companies transparencies. Right? So I will focus on lending because of the fintech forum in Mumbai, and of course it's very important. So you can take two, case studies from India. One was related to lending card, and other is related to capital flow. These are the two big success stories from India. And what did they did? Of course, it was a huge business opportunity they captured. Okay, because in India we have a very unique situation. Big bank lends to a lot of industrialists, and microfinance companies goes to rural India. And MSME is working capital because they are very small, and our economy 50% of it is dependent on the small entrepreneurs who do very small businesses. These two companies use alternate data sources because our lending philosophies of the banks are on the previous financial history and soundness. And these two startups, which are very successful today, have created how alternate data sources can be used with AI to create a business opportunity. And you can see what spectacular thing AI has done, a societal impact, a financial community which was not having a working capital loan because he was working some platforms, giving some tickets, broker. So number one, huge employment created opportunity for a population which was completely excluded from this one. And secondly, financial inclusion. And you can see how data, the alternate data, social media data, your history on phones, these companies have exploited and created prediction models, which they are able to create a huge societal impact. So I think it is not only a business opportunity, it is like the first presentation our friend Pratham made, it can create huge societal impact as well.
Thanks. Yes. So digital as a mode to better inclusion. Agree. Right. Absolutely agree. I move to the round two, and maybe we're going slower. I don't know. Here we look at role of AI in driving innovation. So I'll start with you, Hemant, again. Could you share examples of how AI-powered automation have shaped traditional businesses in your past projects at IBM? So you could take away from your project experience.
Yeah, so as I said, we started AI more than a decade ago. And there are multiple examples that we've seen, and it has transformed the way businesses were running. And something which came around was when the mobile application wave was going around. And that's the time where IoT devices, mobile interactions were building up. So this was for a FMCG client where they had a beverage they launched, which had to be transferred to stores at a particular temperature. Okay, and what used to happen as it used to distribute across in the US market, because of various factors which are externally impacting as it is getting transported, this traffic, weather plays an important role. If it does not meet a particular temperature, they had to dump all those bottles away. So huge wastage getting created. And this is where they started using a lot of external factor, weather data, traffic data. And they had placed cooling racks into their transportation where they could really track at a real time what is the temperature of those bottles, what is the best route available right now, looking at the traffic situation, how the weather is today. If it's too hot, it's going to get warmer faster. And then the system suggesting the best route available to reach to with stores. And that actually reduced about 40% of the wastage which they were doing. So that's a very interesting case. That's one way where we are fully automating most of this. The second scenario is where how AI does the heavy lifting part. So this is again for a FMCG client, where for transferring their goods, somebody sitting in the office would really roll out what places they want to send their workloads to. And they will have suggestions coming from the carriers that, okay, we will do it at this load. And now all that manual heavy lifting, based on the historic data, gets auto suggested to the FMCG client. So when they have to ship a load from one place to another, the system automatically using the past data is able to suggest, I see these are the top vendors who will comply to this at this possible cost range. And all they have to do is initiate from the system itself a request for the code and get that executed. So all that heavy lifting part, so all we are doing is analyzing and making the last decision. That's where human in the loop is there. But rest, all the heavy lifting is done by AI. So using data to really transforming the way things are. So these are two examples that we see.
Thank you. Thanks. Gaurav, I know HCL has been investing a lot on products, on platforms that enable your customer solutions. What innovative AI-based product strategies are you focusing on in the hybrid cloud domain to stay ahead in the evolving tech landscape? Little winded.
Yeah. So products have to be looked upon in two ways for AI. Basically, and this is again the customer perspective we work every day on the business side of it. The first one is any large customer environment will have at least 100 plus heterogeneous products that make that environment. Everybody is throwing the AI in some shape and form out of those products. So the customers are basically coming to us and saying, how do I utilize AI from each one of them? That's a big problem today that we are facing. How do you simplify that consumption? So a lot of our you can say offerings or solutions are towards that simplification. When you have a storage vendor churning out some AI insights, a backup vendor churning out insights, your ERP vendor churning out insights, your compute vendors churning out insights, or a hyperscaler like AWS Azure telling you that I can do every damn thing for you. How do you actually make sure that AI in products is consumed in a way that is most suited to your environment and not what the vendor is pushing to you? That's one. That's AI in products. Then there is products for AI. So now the complexity is even more. You've got so many, everyone wants to sell, right? That's the hard truth in the market. So everyone will come and say, you take this and you can do AI in this fashion. I know a backup vendor who said, I have access to your backup data, which is entire data. You can run queries on top of it. So the customer asked that, how will I actually govern those queries and why will I touch my backup data in case I get hit tomorrow, right? So there are different things on that. So from a product standpoint, how do you make sure that it's the right fit for the customer? We are focused a lot on the integrations part of it. A lot of it that we are doing on the product side is how do you make sure that AI moves from POC to scale within an environment. That is where the true adoption of AI will happen. POCs is like you can do a POC in a lab. You just need to have few clusters. A model needs to run on top of it. You are feeding the data. The use case looks good, but it's the scale that matters. From training to inference, and when that inference happens, are you able to basically make sure that you are getting the required ROI, whether it's an internal user or whether it's an external user, depending upon the use case that you have done. So the entire conversation that is there in the market, Goldman Sachs recently had a couple of reports where they said 1 trillion is going into AI, whether it's making sense, right? Whether it will give me that ROI or not. So that entire conversation is how do you move from lab to scale? Once you go into scale is when the true adoption of AI, Gen AI is going to happen, and the effort, our effort is in terms of products or services is towards that piece.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gaurav. To you, Ankur, and maybe it's time for this. You've been part of projects around AI for good. So talk a bit about how AI can be leveraged to address critical social challenges. Of course, Pratham showed us a glimpse of it. But
Yeah, I think that's picking up quite a bit of traction, right? Just to give you a few examples of some of the areas where we have worked, right? Within Tiger, right, we have this initiative called AI for Good, right? As you're aware, it's completely voluntary, right? So we do it on a pro bono basis, right? Working with NGOs, healthcare providers, visual institutions, on. So to give a few examples, right, and diverse use cases. So very interesting and diverse use cases. Like for example, we work with a leading hospital and cancer research institute where we developed machine learning models that will kind of predict drug dosage, right, in terms of whether a particular drug needs to be administered or not, and if it is to be administered, what is the recommended dosage. Of course, it does not replace the doctor. It kind of assists the doctor, right? So you look at things like biomarkers, patient journeys, treatment pathways, right? And you arrive at an ML model. Of course, it's in beta, but what is interesting is that intent, like I was saying, right, in the morning is there, right, to leverage AI. NGOs, we have worked with quite a few NGOs. For NGOs, I would say the focus has been probably because there are not very robust mechanisms to gather and store data. So rather than looking at predictive or prescriptive solutions, right, the focus is more on the descriptive analytics side, right, trying to even build basic dashboards, get a sense of trends and so on. So we have worked with a few NGOs there. We have, during COVID-19 days, right, we have also worked with educational institutions and state governments to build COVID tracking solutions, right, dashboards that will show COVID case progression. It'll show essentially the intervention measures, right? If you're making any intervention measures like vaccines, masks, how is that actually impacting the cases, right? So these are some of the use cases that we have done. Now, what I'm also seeing, right, across healthcare institutions, education, research institutes, and so on, a lot of research is happening essentially around things like localizing LLMs, right? So as you know, right, there are a lot of problems in our country. Just give one specific example on infant mortality rate, right? I think we are at about 178 out of 227, right? It was part of the latest statistics. So that's one area a lot of traction is happening, and there are LLMs that are getting built in local languages. I won't say built; it's more of RAG and leveraging models such as Llama that is already there, and then providing information in local languages, whether it be Hindi, Bengali, right, Telugu, and so on. And this, I think, in the future will definitely make a dent, right, in improving some of these health statistics, right. Image analytics is one another key area, right, where a lot of traction research is happening on the social space. So, for example, anemia, for example, is endemic in our country, right? And the way you detect anemia is through a blood test, but often that is not possible, right, in remote areas. So the question is, can you implement some kind of image analytics solution that will look at skin pallor, eyelids, right, and come up with at least an indication, right, whether a patient is anemic or not. So solutions like that can be deployed, right, in local health centers across the country, and then drugs like or even iron tablets, etc., right, can be kind of prescribed. So that's how I'm seeing it. I would say progress is being made. There is intent, right, but we still have a long way to go to kind of implement solutions at larger scale. Various challenges I touched upon: data, scale, right? That's another aspect. So the journey has started, but I think we have a long way to go there.
Thanks. Thank you so much. This is so good. Aniket, what innovations do you foresee becoming standard in connected and autonomous vehicles over the next decade?
Thanks for the question. So I think if you look at the automotive industry, there's four big trends that have been really driving innovation. There is connected, there is autonomous, there is electric, and then from a overall mobility model perspective, shared, more as a business model, but it's a business model that's enabled fundamentally by technology. I think all of these continue to evolve. I'll address autonomous first because I think we've kind of past the hype curve now on automotive. I've had a couple of questions on autonomous since I came in. Is it I think people are now increasingly believing that level 5 autonomy may never come. We've seen descaling from GM. We've seen descaling. Apple exiting their industry's worst kept secret car project. But I don't see, I think autonomous will continue to be enhanced with AI. And see, I don't see this autonomous as necessarily replacing. When a new technology comes in, it does not necessarily replace everything, although we start with that expectation. When television came in, there was largely an expectation that it would replace radio. That didn't happen because radio found its own niche where it's still around. Now maybe radio is in the process of getting replaced by internet, but it took several decades to happen. So I see autonomous continuing to evolve with AI, and there will be a lot of improvements that come in that will make it into our day-to-day lives that are really triggered by autonomous. So a lot of features that you see in today's vehicles, right? You have things like lane keep assist, for example, or collision detection warning, adaptive cruise control. Where did this come from? They came from autonomous, right? It is trickled down from autonomous to your day-to-day vehicles, right? I may not want a fully autonomous vehicle, but would I want a vehicle that parks itself? Absolutely. I would want that self-parking feature. I think in Pratham's presentation, he mentioned about all of these elements of the network communicating to enable something like this. One of the big areas in vehicles that will evolve kind of at a confluence of connected and autonomous is V2X, vehicle to everything communication. Because increasingly today's vehicles come with both a GPS and an embedded SIM, right? Which means the vehicles can communicate as a part of this infrastructure. We spoke about the signaling system having ability to communicate, we having ability to communicate, thanks to our smartphones with our ambient environment. Vehicles can do that too. And vehicles today are largely software driven and software controlled, particularly as we could get into electric vehicles. It is no longer a purely mechanical and electrical component, which means it can be controlled. I would go beyond what was presented, and I would say that when you have an ambulance coming in, and great presentation by the way, but when you have an ambulance coming in, we today have an ability to not only communicate to the driver, we can communicate to the vehicle, we can stop the vehicle, we can navigate the vehicle out of the way automatically because it is all controlled by software, right? I can have an agent that detects that, and I can get out of the way and create that bubble, create that corridor automatically. We have the technology. It is a question of leveraging it, right? It's more of a human acceptance of technology. Do I want somebody to involuntarily take control of my vehicle and park it to the side, right, when I'm 10 minutes late for my next meeting? I don't know about that, right? So it is more of a societal question rather than a technology question, right? And so I think connected will continue, and as I said, right, again, for electric vehicles moving forward, the differentiator is going to be software. And when you have software coming in, connected becomes a requirement, because vehicles have very long life as compared to other pieces of technology. A typical vehicle gets used by one user for 4 to 5 years, then it gets sold, then the second user uses it for 4 to 5 years, then they sell it again to a fleet operator who uses it as a cab for another 10 years, right? So 15 to 20 year lifespan of the vehicle, and it's not something like a smartphone you can replace every couple of years, right? So how do you have the technology that is going to be relevant for the next 15 years? And the only way that you can do it is with ability to have updatable software. So we've been doing a lot of work in over-the-air updates of the software, right? So your hardware is static, but your software keeps evolving, right? And so that's another area where I see AI coming in to play a larger role, because it is very hard today to monetize those business models, because you have an ongoing operational cost of maintaining the software, you have an ongoing operational cost of providing new features, but nobody is willing to pay for it, right? When you pay 20-30 lakhs for a vehicle, you don't want to go back to the OEM next year and pay another 5,000 subscription fee, right? Because you own the vehicle, right? But you're going to have that ongoing cost for the next 15-20 years. Your cloud costs are going to go on, your software maintenance costs are going to go on, which means having these models are a necessity now. And you are not going to get that differentiation through providing something which is a standard feature. It has to be something that is personalized. It has to be something that I can connect to. It has to be something that I'm willing to pay for because it is making an impact. And there's a lot of things that can be done. One of the features, I was just talking, advantage of being part of the automotive industry. I was talking to our infotainment people, and I was in a situation where I had to take a meeting, and I wanted to be absolutely sure that I'm not taking it on my way. Driving was a critical meeting. I wanted to be either in office or at home so that I have a stable connection. And but the traffic is unpredictable, right? And I was just telling my infotainment guys that, hey, you know what? Why can't the car tell me this, right? When I'm trying to start the vehicle, it has all the information. It could tell me, hey, you know what? Please don't leave. Please stay in the office because you're not going to make it for the next meeting. Because it has access to my calendar. It knows my meeting is with the customer. We have the technology to do that, and it like a light bulb went up. They said, let's start maybe looking at this, right? Maybe this is something that we will see in the next couple of years coming in, right? I think it's going to be very interesting what AI does to the automotive space in the oncoming couple of years. And we just getting started with this process, right? I think we are at the stage where we just sort of moving past the POC, past the FOMO-driven thing, to starting to understand. We are moving past idli sambar powered by AI to really actually figure out what the product is and what the product market fit is, right? So I think we'll kind of get there.
Okay, thanks so much. So I think we are not doing too well on time. So this round we'll make a little faster one. All of you have talked about time to move out of the POC stage, the Samba, whatever, POC, FOMO stage to a scaling stage, right? Fine, yes, we have to scale fast. What challenges do you see in the scaling situation, right? Or firstly, even the adoption situation. So let me ask the first question to Hemant. From your experience, what are the main cultural, organizational barriers business face when trying to both implement AI, scale AI? So, and we could make this round faster.
Okay, so first of all, it's not one size fits all scenario. So how AI will be used in India will not be used the same way in China. So when we are, if I think of this, we have to keep the customer value-driven behavior at the center of it. That's what we are approaching. And then there is some general AI which gets applied to it, and then it has to be localized. So if we don't localize it, it will stop us. The future also, there's a lot of talks about the foundation models and crazy things being done. The future will be a multi-model on multi-cloud. That's the only way we can scale. So it is not one model will do everything. It has to be specialized models, even smaller models, not large language models, and then on multi-cloud. That's how I see scaling will be done.
Wonderful. Gaurav, as hybrid cloud services become more AI-driven, what are the unique challenges associated with deploying AI solutions in hybrid cloud models, particularly in terms of security and compliance?
Okay. First of all, when we say hybrid cloud, it is across the board, all technologies we work with. Right? So don't take it as only cloud that I'm talking about. Right. On the challenge front, I don't know when the security or regulation question will come, but I'll tell you a story what a customer of mine basically said. And we were presenting to them, I was doing whiteboarding, and 45 minutes of whiteboarding, telling him use cases, you can run this, that, how, governance, all of that. The customer asked me that, Gaurav, all this is fine. You just tell me that, today, if I'm a privileged user and a Copilot or anything is running, you have access to all my data, and that laptop someone has to just access and get all of it, right? There's no ransomware attack needed, there's nothing needed, right? It's as simple as that. So I think one of the challenges is how do you put guardrails without making sure that the outcome gets affected. That's one of the key one-line challenge that we look at in the context of AI. The second is more in terms of the business models, and I keep on coming back to that. Business models in terms of, and we have multiple now popping up. There's a gain share model, there's a percentage link model, there's a consumption based model, and whatnot, and n number of models. But which model in which scenario is the right fit, and for how long, is something that we need to basically look at. The third challenge is the complexity that I spoke about. How do you simplify it for the customers? That complexity is something that actually takes away a lot of, because you have, if you are going to a CEO and you are asking, I want to do this, there's probably 1 or 2 shots that you will get at. If you don't succeed, then you don't succeed. It's the hard reality, right? So that challenge is also something that we need to look at. The fourth challenge is on the skills part of it. You don't have skills in the market. Whatever you have to do, you have to groom. AI cannot be taught via one course. You need grooming over a period of time and in different aspects. If you are an operations guy, you need to know cloud, you need to know AI, you need to know any number of things, right? Similarly, if you are a finance guy, you need to go beyond your usual finance conversations and understand that. So that skills part is also something which is a challenge which we are trying to overcome on that. And the fifth piece, which I was surprised no one spoke about it so far, is sustainability in terms of running AI, which we have to look at. How do you balance it? I mean, in terms of sustainability part. Those are the 5 things, 5 buckets rather, in which we see or we try to solve challenges for our customers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, we did have a sustainability question down the line. So, sure, I'll come with that question to you. Ankur, so you've now been working with a lot of, Tiger Analytics has been working with a lot of implementations. And then with the models and those in the production environment, they're the usual challenges. So my question to you is, how do you address the challenge of integrating AI and machine learning models in environments where there's a high degree of variability? Environments such as insurance risk assessment or even patient care. Maybe you could talk more from a patient. Variability in the environments, variability in data.
So I think it again goes back to a few challenges, right, that we have when we're talking about machine learning models, right? I'll keep it brief, right? So one, to start with, right, data, right? So I look at it in terms of 3 ways to answer this, right? So data. So data, you have aspects such as, for example, compliance, right? GDPR as an example, right? You can only use data if the customer gives consent to. So for example, do you therefore have consent management systems, right, that actually capture that information? And also, how are you making sure that that data is not being used in modeling, right? So there's one aspect to consider there. And it's also not just a one-time thing, right? Customers may kind of revoke their consent at any point of time. So how do you ensure, right, therefore, that the training data is therefore essentially updated, right? So that's one part of it. The second part of it, again, a lot of moving parts, a lot of regulatory requirements, for example, right, in places like insurance and healthcare, means that you need to have, and most insurance and healthcare companies do, some kind of a model ethics and compliance management committees, right? So essentially they track things on how the model is being built, right? What kind of variables are being used in the model, the documentations, what kind of information is being sent to downstream systems, right? Things like that. So they kind of act as overall gatekeepers, right? Not just from, of course, a technical standpoint where you have teams that do that, but you need definitely, right, approval from this particular committee. And this committee is composed of various folks, right? You have data scientists, legal experts, you have downstream application participants, right, who use those applications, right? All these folks come together and then they kind of give the go-ahead, right, in terms of whether to deploy the model into production. And not just production deployment, I think that's what you were referring to, right? Once the model is in production, right, how do you ensure, for example, the model performance is good? How do you track things like data variability, drift, right? So therefore, this particular group committee also works with model management and production support teams, right, to implement that. So that's essentially on the data and the process side. The third aspect, again, very, very important to keep in mind as we look at a multi-environment, right, multi-application, regulatory kind of situations in healthcare and insurance is awareness, right? So in most healthcare and insurance companies, right, could be patient care, claims, and so on. Very important that there are regular awareness training sessions, not just for the company representatives in terms of data scientists, but also for vendors as well. So we have very, very frequent training programs, updates from a regulation standpoint, right, that this team needs to be aware of.
Thanks. Aniket, with you, I'm starting the last round. My question to you is, as the AI adoption grows, how do you balance the need for cutting-edge innovations with concerns, extending again to Ankur's points, concerns around data privacy, ethics, and regulatory compliance?
Sure, thanks. So automotive industry is a regulated industry, and I think there's three parts to that really drive the regulation. One is data privacy, as was mentioned. The other is environmental impact. It is the industry that has the most impact on the environment very close to us. The pollution happens at your doorstep, not in a factory somewhere else. And the other aspect is safety. So it's something which is cause of a lot of fatalities. I think Pratham showed us some of the statistics from a different context, but a lot of those are road accident cases as well, right? So there is when it comes to privacy and ethics, right? Let me tackle the ethics part first. I think it's important to have a ethics framework at an organizational level, because for a lot of these decisions that are made by the AI, it needs to be calibrated with the impact. So there are two elements to it, right? What decisions you are making, and then the other is explainability of any decision, right? It is important that not only a decision comes out, but you understand, somebody is able to understand and explain that decision. And what happens is, if we look at the ethics part of it, it is essentially based on values, and each of us have our own values that is driven through our own learning. The intelligence here is collecting data through these sensors, for decades, and that's how your values are getting formed, right? But you have to look at the organization as an entity. What is the organization's values, and how do people in the organization take those decisions? Do they take them based on their values, where there might be a lot of variability, or is there a benchmark? Is there something that they can reference in taking those decisions? Because these decisions are impacting real people in a real way. So that is something that needs to be taken care of, and it's something that organizations really need to take the time to define. It's not a marketing exercise. It's going to be more critical as AI comes in. And then when it comes to the privacy side, which you mentioned, I think it has to be privacy by design. Privacy is not about just regulation compliance. Regulation is a part of it, but I think we have to make sure that it's something that we are thinking about as we design new systems. It's not something that we want to bolt on, because we want to respect each user. We want to respect ourselves, irrespective of what the government is saying, irrespective of what the regulation is saying. And there is a lot of things that are there. I think in the pre-panel discussion we spoke about need for localization of models, because a lot of context of the data for these pre-trained models that we use comes from the Western world. How do we make that relevant to our scenario, right? Our environment, right? We spoke about language. We're working on one of the solutions for technicians to diagnose a vehicle, when a vehicle comes to the service center using AI. And it's important that that tool be able to talk in the technician's language, right? It cannot be communicating in English. It will simply not work, right? So all of those things come into play. Point is, I don't look at ethics and data privacy as a regulation problem. It is a organization problem, and the regulation are probably the minimum that they expect us to do, right? And if you're ahead of us, then you'll not be reactive to regulation, right? So that's the way to look at it.
Thank you. Now this question I'll open to all of you. In the context of AI, we see regulations are trying to keep pace with the AI movement changes. Changes are happening faster. Governments are struggling with regulation. So how do you see this whole regulation aspect pan out? As Gaurav mentioned, regulation should not stop the technology growth, right? So how do you see the regulations pan out from now on? And that will be my last question. So any of you can take it actually.
So globally we see regulations. The first act, AI Act, is EU AI Act, basically, that came out, and they classified it according to risk, unacceptable risk versus what is acceptable and how much of it is acceptable. I think the regulations also are evolving, and US is about to come out. They have executive orders, but not a regulation as of now. That is there. So it has to evolve, but what we firmly believe is it has to evolve in an integrated fashion. You have to look at the impact which is on society, business. In certain cases, we also have to look at, once it goes to scale, the sustainability part of it, because there are regulations around that also. So the regulations have to work in tandem in terms of this, because AI is going to impact everything once it gets into that kind of a stage that is there. That is a short answer to how we see it evolving. The way European Union basically reacted to sustainability demands. And then now the UAI Act, they have started looking at how to implement and look at risk in a different way. There are other regulations as well in EU. They all have to basically work in tandem, and at some point they will converge basically in our.
If I may add what Gaurav mentioned. So I think a couple of points as compliance will play a catch up in this case, right? So same happened with social platforms. Data was all out, and then there were regulations which came in. So it will happen all the more so in AI because we are moving too fast. And I think what Aniket mentioned is a very interesting topic. We're talking about we have to go ethics by design, right? So, and when we are planning these solutions, we have to study the layers of impact. These solutions from an AI standpoint, what are the how it is harming the environment, how it is harming our individuals, and that has to be controlled at the time of design, rather than once the compliance come out we re-engineer, because then it'll be too late.
I'll now end with one last question to all of you. For the audience, that is majority of our students actually, in your opinion, what skills and competencies should they develop to, for a better career in AI and related technologies? And I'll then open the floor to other students to ask questions.
So I'll tell you three things, right? You and AI also in general. So as you become business leaders, make sure you you develop ethical leadership, right? So do the right thing. If the organizations that you work for really need that maturity, bring that in. So bring that change. Second is on you will have to, the learning on the AI piece is for everyone. So don't think I'm a business leader, I need not know what technology does, because it's very pervasive right now. And third thing, which is most critical, is be creative as we are moving. So if you compare it when the computers were invented, that was a great invention, but what we did with computers was far bigger. The same thing will happen with AI. It is a great milestone in tech, but what we'll do with AI will become all the more bigger. So three things, please, if you can remember.
Maybe I'll just add to that, right? I think one of the key things is what we call business to analytics translation, right? So how do you essentially, for example, identify the use cases? How do you prioritize, right? I think that's one area where clients are seeking a lot of help, because a lot of ideas, but how do you actually prioritize that is important. Second, also, I think a good understanding of the domain, and not just the domain, the data, right? What kind of data is getting used, right? Particularly for domains like BFS, healthcare, right, is very, very crucial. I think the third part is also very important, because ultimately AI projects, programs are multi-disciplinary, right? You need to build your pipelines, you need to extract data from different sources, right? There's an aspect of developing models, there's an aspect of maintaining models once you deploy them, right? Just to ensure that there's complete ROI. So your program management skills, right? Ability to kind of manage multidisciplinary technical folks, right, in a program also becomes very critical.
Yeah, I think Hemant and Ankur have covered all the points, but I'll mention for the group over here, I think, ability to learn, desire to learn continuously, reinvent in yourself, right? that's going to be relevant, because there'll be evolutionary and revolutionary technologies coming in, AI, more stuff will come in. And I think, you are well positioned, because you come with 4-5 years of industry experience, and now you've chosen to come in and, learn something new, right? So I think you already have the DNA, so I'm sure all of you will do great in the new world of AI. So,
yeah, I'm the last one in the Viva, so I'll probably bring a different perspective. In addition to whatever they said. Oh, okay. Yeah. He's the prof, so he'll mark us. We see skills coming out in, or rather roles coming out in two buckets. First one is an I-shaped skill, which is more in depth. So if you are more technology oriented, or you want to go more in depth, then go into depth, get into different in-depth kind of roles, the courses or all of that, right? The other one is an E-shaped business leader. So he has understanding, he or she has the understanding of, the business, finance, AI, lot of it, right? Typically, who's basically at the decision-making level. So you decide whether you want to be at a decision-making influence level. Then you need to know, and the E-shaped is not basically at the periphery only. He or she is also going 2 levels deep at least. But the I-shaped is basically going 3 to 4 levels and looking at a data scientist or all those roles. Both the roles are good, both are required for the society. You decide where you basically want to go. That's my perspective on the skills.
Thank you. Thanks, Gaurav. Milind, do you have some thoughts in terms of what students need to develop from skills and competencies perspective?
Yeah, I think my fellow panelists covered most of things, but I would like to do one more part. I'm in this industry for 40 years and started from earlier hardware, because at that time when it is computers came, you have to learn hardware. Then shifted to software, then said you have to go and learn how computer software has to be done, then data. Today, first time in last 18 months, something else has happened, and that you should know, that computer has started understanding. ChatGPT has changed that. Today, you don't have to learn how to use ChatGPT to learn Python, right? So tomorrow's world will be how do you use that tool to make sure that whichever domains you are, how do you use and become more proficient, you will have a competitive advantage. So today, computers have started learning what you want. That was the first time happened in last 10 years. That you should understand, not only getting answers from ChatGPT.
So there's a very interesting thing, just and we define the guardrails, right? How much we believe these systems. So if you ask ChatGPT that how many R's are there in strawberry, the result it gives is 2, not 3. So yes, knowing you're right, it's very important.
So we now open the student question round. We'll take some questions from our students as well.
Hi Hemant, very good morning. So
Hey.
yeah, so my question is for you, like what are the key considerations for integrating AI with the legacy systems that we have, such as in IBM, TV2 and other legacy systems? And how should a business ensure that while integrating these AI with the legacy system, there should be a less operational disruption, or there should be no issue in the operational disruption?
So you will have to contextualize, so you cannot use generic AI in business context. And I think Ankur mentioned about it. RAG-based retrieval is something which is there. If you provide that context of data, you're fine-tuning your AI models, which can talk in the right language. So that's how it will always be. So the transition is, if you're touching superficially on more generic skills like conversation, understanding human language, those are taken care by AI agents. Then you move into a RAG-based retrieval where you will contextualize and bring this legacy data and make sense in a business context. And then once you really graduate from there, and then you go towards a AI agentic way where you let the AI decide what is right and wrong. So that's how it is.
Thank you, Hemant.
Morning, Ankur. Samuchal here. So I come from the analytics industry. Hello. I come from the analytics industry with a background in customer analytics. You mentioned the use of AI to build better customer models for cross-selling and upselling and better customer engagement as well. While AI has helped us a lot in doing that, and we have started seeing that we have started to collect a lot of data, like enormous amounts of data, and it's considered the new oil. But having said that, more often than not, in my personal experiences, I've seen that companies are a little bit clueless, I would say, or not sure about what to do with those enormous amount of data. So even though the data storage costs have gone down with Cosmos DBs and MongoDBs and Apaches and all, do you see AI kind of playing a role in helping us decide what data to store or like filter out unnecessary data?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think from my experience, right, most companies, when they think of AI analytics implementation, right, they start from essentially starting with maybe taking one particular BU, right, let's say claims and insurance, right. Then they look at, to start with, what are the business priorities there, right? So for example, can I be more efficient, right, in handling my claims? That can be one particular priority area. Can I, for example, reduce the claim frauds, right, that I kind of spoke about? Can I reduce litigation, right, in claims, which is again a huge cost, right? So you start there, then you define for each of these priorities what are the improvement areas that could be, right? Like, for example, for claim handling, right, you would want to have a mechanism that would, or a model that will score claim severity, right? What are my high severity claims? And then I will assign those claims to my most experienced claim adjusters, right? So that's the second level. Then from that particular angle, right, you kind of define what are the use cases or the AI/ML models that can be used. So for example, here I will define, or I will create an ML model that will score each of my claims at something called first notification of loss. The first time somebody files a claim, right? Claim is a pretty long journey. So that's where you start. Then you map basically what data do you need to solve that particular use case, right? So you start from the business problem, then you go back to essentially the data. I think that's how I see most of the companies doing it. Maybe there are avenues, therefore, as they get even more mature, they can take a call in terms of, okay, this particular type of data I may not need, right? Or I may archive, right? Or things like that. But it's always starting from the business problem and then getting to the necessary data, right? That's how, in my experience, right, I've seen it.
Thank you so much.
Hello. So I recently understood a concept called industry cloud, right? So how about creating AI clouds specifically for certain industries just to get the proposed value out of it? Since like a lot of trillions of dollars are getting spent to create large language models, instead create small language models for specifically one particular industry. So what are your thoughts on it?
Thanks for the question. So from an industry cloud perspective, if you look at it, you will see the emergence of AI clouds. That is something that is in the making. You will see in the next 2 years more domain-centric AI as a service kind of clouds that will come up. The question here is again in terms of the how much data do you want to basically put there? How do you put a guardrail? When the industry clouds came, the usual industry clouds that you're talking about, all it was done was on top of infra as a service, you had put some controls and you could then move a lot of things there. That's one of the reasons a lot of the industry clouds didn't get the adoption that they should have basically. So the similar thing will basically happen with AI, but in case of AI, one thing is different. Once you get into AI as a service, the cost of running AI with a company versus the cost of getting the inferencing or the insights using AI as a service would typically not be matching in a lot of ways, right? And that is where we see AI clouds becoming a norm for at least to start off with non-critical kind of data and non-critical kind of you would say insights or applications, and then over a period of time when it evolves, then you would see majorly a lot of those customers basically doing it more from a production grade as well.
And just to add there, if I talk about IBM, this is exactly the pattern that we see. So there are two forms of partnership. So we are partnered with a bigger LLM players. So we use Meta, Llama 3, we are using Mistral, but then, or BERT, for example, and then contextualizing, making smaller language models which are specific to industry. So I think that's going to grow more and more. It's lighter, it's faster, and it is in more deeper in the context rather than the large language model. So
thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone, and first of all thank you so much for the informative session. This is open to all questions. So AI at a very core level, or the models we are talking about at a very core level, are black box models. And if we talk about RAG or building upon Llama or open source models, so you're using a black box that you didn't even build. So at an industry level, if not at the consumer level, how do you make sure that you have a transparent view of if there's something going wrong, that you have control over it, and if things go wrong, who is responsible for it? So any ideas or thoughts on that?
So there are 5 pillars of AI which come into play in this. If it's a black box, customers will not warm up to it. So there are 5 things. 1, it has to be fair, any model that is there. So there is no kind of bias that is there. And there has to be proven artifacts that what kind of data we trained on, how did we train on, who trained this data. There has to be transparency, right? So how this engine is working, it has to be a transparent box and not a black box. Third is explainability. So what is being shown as an output, can you explain it, how it was derived? That's the third one. And fourth is how robust it will be, that nobody hacks into it and uses it as per their name. And finally, the data privacy piece. So these, if it remains as black box, it will not be business relevant and people will not use it anymore. Yes, you can still do ChatGPT stuff, basic prompting, get summarization, write letters, but that's not what business will really gain out of.
Thank you. I think just to add to that, there's a lot of work happening in this area from a explainability perspective for language models and model observabilities. It's I think in the early stage. So you'll probably see this side of the house also maturing over and the space is moving very fast. So I think in a short time frame we'll see technologies emerging. So I acknowledge this is a real problem that needs to be handled, but there's also technical solutions that are coming out of the space.
So just to add on to that, till the model remains black box, it will not get adopted by enterprises. You look at open source, you've got tons of use cases in open source, but how much of the open source is basically into the commercialized? Unless and until somebody like Red Hat came and said, I will give you a commercialized version which is supported, your open source typically is part of labs or it's part of consumer small projects and things like that, right? So that black box has to open up in some way.
Just one final point.
We'll
right?
take
Because
one last.
Sorry, I just wanted to just maybe 10 seconds, right? Very interesting question, right? And not just for Gen AI, right? We also experience this for traditional ML models, right? Models like GPM, etc., right? Clients want to know, right, what variables, how the model is behaving. So there are techniques, right? You can read that up. There's something called Shapley, right? There's something called line. It's kind of a layer built, right, on the black box, which has some level of explainability, right, in terms of how the variables, what are the most important features, etc. for the model.
Thank you, students. We'll take one last question. Okay, two last questions.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
3 last questions. 3. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. So my question is to Milind sir. So we saw that with AI, a lot of legacy systems are trying to implement AI in their business models. So my question is, first of all, what are the key considerations while adopting the AI to transform your business model? And second, what are the ethical challenges related with it?
See, ethical challenges, I think panelists have already covered. but throughout my career when I implemented, and I am from the European background where I implemented many of those projects, one of the challenges is how much data is sufficient. Because all the, after training the model, whatever confusion matrix, false positive, false negative, is an outcome of the sample we have used for training. And I'm still yet to figure out that what is the sufficiency test. Okay, because all the predictions comes by that particular set, and there is no particular way of finding out that this is the perfect one for my business, right? And that is the biggest challenge. Because the rest, there are many things in the literature, education and all. But for example, lending, because that is where I did most of my work. Most of the time, how do I take? Because AI will be used for scale. If AI is likely to be used for 5 decision making, I don't think anybody will use. And if it's scale, that means you will have to have a trust, right? And that trust within the framework, whatever our panelists have explained, for which how much data is sufficient and what is the quality of data, I think that is a very unanswered puzzle today.
And in addition to that, your definition of legacy matters a lot.
Yeah.
What is legacy for you? You got still people utilizing mainframes. You're going back to mainframes again from an AI standpoint. So what is your definition of legacy? Anything you buy today becomes legacy tomorrow, right? In a general parlance. So how do you basically look at the right fit for your organization, whether it's data, technology, people, skills, all of that piece becomes very, very important. That's the complexity in terms of when you say that I have invested something and I want to basically reutilize it, that legacy for that matter on that. Those are the things that we are looking at.
Hi, my name is Rohan. I come from infotainment domain. So I want to ask, as we are struggling with EV infrastructure, so going ahead when we talk about V2V and V2X infrastructure, so is there a challenge? And if there is a challenge, who will be the players in it? Will it be the tech companies or the OEMs who will be scaling that?
Right, thanks. So if I understood the question, just re-articulating because of the mic, your question is around V2X and V2G, right?
Yeah, V2X and V2V.
Vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to everything. So I think it's a problem that is being tackled. I think in terms of the key players, I think it's a confluence of automotive and telecom. I think 5G is kind of enabling a lot of these services now. And with 5G, the fundamental network architecture is very different from 4G. Because the nodes are to get slightly technical, the nodes are very, very granular, and there is also high bandwidth communication possible. Plus, with 5G, what happens is you also have ability to do some computation at the node, the telecom node. It's not just a transmission point any longer. So there is work that is happening in this space, and I think we'll see a lot of this come to fruition over the next few years. I think probably the primary roadblock today which is getting solved is the deployment of 5G networks, but we've already seen that happening in a significant way. Japan has taken the lead. We've seen large scale deployment in the US in the last couple of years. We've also seen rollout very early in the cycle. If you compare to previous iterations of 3G and 4G, the duration it took to come to India versus what's happened now. One of the issues is that development of vehicles is a very long cycle model. People already have their models for 27, 28, 29, 30 in the pipeline in terms of the design. The design process takes several years because there's a lot of regulation, there is a lot of safety, that aspect that needs to be taken care of. So sometimes the technology, especially when it needs to be incorporated into vehicles, move slowly. But I think we are coming to that inflection point where all of these elements are coming together. And there's a lot of consortiums. We work very closely with telecom companies in this space, and we'll see solutions coming through, over the next 2-3 years in this space.
Thank you, students. One last question. So between the two of you, decide who has to raise that question. And I hope the mic works.
Hello, sir. My name is Tushar. So whenever we talk about AI in healthcare, it has a major impact in the diagnostic and predictive decision. Talking about diagnostic, India has 1 lakh patients per one radiologist, and it has a huge pressure on the radiologist. How AI can help to reduce this pressure? Can we have some foundation models for the radiology itself, and how it will help us maintain to precision in decision? So how it will help in that?
I'll take a stab at that, right? It's in the India context, and I've been meetings, right, as part of the AI for Good Foundation, right, where we have met with a lot of research folks, right, who are working with images, right, CT scan, right, lung scans, right, brain scans, right, USG, right, all that. I think I would say that, look, the progress is being made, right? I mean, yes, the technology is available. You have things like image analytics, computer vision, etc., right? The challenge that comes is building sufficient training data, right? Enough images, right? To ensure that the models are performing optimally, right? That's one. Second, I think, the bigger challenge that is there is this is not about eliminating the doctor, right? Not at all, right? It is about how we can kind of make the doctor's job easier, right? So it could be, right, in the future, you might see that these models kind of focus on, when you look at classification of scans, right, maybe they will be able to call out the ones that need attention, right, in a better manner. So while the doctor still kind of goes through all the scans in terms of priority, in terms of probably looking at multi-disciplinary doctors coming together, right? The ones that are marked as maybe anomalies or need greater attention, right? That has to be worked out. So it's not really, in my opinion, from what I've heard, again, I'm not an expert in the medical field, but it's not really a technology problem. It's more about an implementation problem, and how do you ensure that the medical providers, right, are not cut out of the loop, right? We don't have that answer yet. I think as we gain maturity, right, as we look at this evolving, I think things will be more clearer. And then finally, I think the other aspect that was touched upon is already it seems in India there is a shortage of trained radiologists, right, technicians. Now you're adding maybe one more layer to it, right? You need even more specialist radiologists, right, who may be looking at the scan at the very first time and then marking stuff that needs probably further attention, right? So it's a multi-dimensional problem. Steps are being taken, but I think, like I said, it will probably take a few more years to arrive at a concrete solution.
Just one more point to answer your question. Google is in a very advanced position with Arvinda Eye Hospital in Chennai. They have now a model trained based on the iris scans, which Arvinda Hospital is doing, and they will be able to predict 5 years ahead of time whether the human being will get a cardiac arrest. So this rat race on the cameras on the smartphones is not for selfies. That is exactly what the problem which you have mentioned.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts so generously. And as you can see, our students are not done with the questions, but we'll close the panel discussion now, and maybe we'll interact outside. So thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, dear panelists, for the insightful discussion. We particularly enjoyed how you spoke about AI applications beyond bots, instances of the use of AI in the actuarials industry, and also affecting the powertrain mix in the auto sector, and the inclusion of regional languages in LLMs. As students, guardrails of AI is an important angle for our careers. Ethics and sustainability was a broad theme that I took away from the conversation. And as a student of SPJIMR, I'm proud of how much the Institute prioritizes and promotes ethical innovation. With this, we come to the end of the IM conclave of Samavesh, but I'm confident that these discussions are just the beginning to our young entrepreneurial and corporate spirits. We conclude by extending our heartfelt gratitude to the esteemed panelists. Your discussions and ideas have surely motivated all of us and given us a deep dive into a typical analytical mindset. Inviting my fellow batchmates, Nikita and Suraj, to extend our token of appreciation. Next, I request the panelists to join us for a few photographs to capture this remarkable day. Dear panelists, please gather around for a group picture. Dear Dean and dearest faculty members, I welcome you to join in for the next picture. Dear panelists, requesting last picture with the IM conclave team.